welcome to the Teaching Our Kids podcast, a place for teachers, parents, and everyone in between to learn about how kids learn. Welcome. Hi, Becki.
Hi, Ashton.
All right. So this week is going to be all about reading. I looked up the definition on Wikipedia for us, and, their fancy words were the process of taking in the sense or meaning of letters, symbols with sight and touch. And that's basically, we both said we define reading as like being able to understand written words. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
This is a big one.
It is. It's a lot. And I just wanted to say real quick before we go into public school versus unschool, there's like 5 big parts of reading, which you guys might not even break down as much as school breaks down, but they're still a part of it. And it's phonics, which is how sounds match with the letters or groups of letters. There's phonemic awareness, which is identifying the sounds in letters and words. Vocabulary, which, understanding what the words mean. Comprehension, which is like understanding what you're reading. And fluency, which is reading with ease and accuracy. So those are like all the 5 parts that come together and help you know how to read. I don't know, is there anything you want to say before I go into my the public school breakdown about reading in general?
No, I think this is a really exciting topic, just because it's one of the main subjects that children are taught, expected to know, are assessed against. There's a lot of social stigmas around the age that kids learn. So there's just so much that goes into reading. We're not going to cover it all today, but I think that we have so much to share from our experience as moms, your experience as a teacher. And there's no way we're going to talk about it all, but let's get into it.
Yeah, yes, for real. Okay. So I just want to start with how it was in public schools. So obviously I went to school to teach, and then my kids are in it right now. And a lot of the big parts, the first one that everybody sort of knows about is assessments that are required to measure the success of the students. And they're there to help the teachers plan the instruction, to make targeted learning. So these kids really know it, so we can challenge them, or these kids need more help with certain skills. So that's what the assessment, ideally is what it's best for, but also the government uses them to measure progress and to give out funding, right, or, your school's doing better and worse, and
or to grade the teacher, right?
Yes, to grade the teacher. Yes, say you're a good teacher because this assessment, your kids are scoring great on it. And that takes away from the real learning, because it adds all these crazy pressures and it stinks. Now, I think assessment is important, but not for that. I wish it wasn't as much pressure. But I think it's good for teachers, because then you can see your learning more than just when you're teaching 30 kids at once. It's hard to notice sometimes how well everyone is doing. So there's assessments, and a lot of that's based on timelines. Kids are expected to hit a certain learning measurement at a certain time. Kindergarten, it's tough. They a lot of them kids come to school and it's oh, this is the first time, and then they want them to be able to hit a certain mark, and it's tough. A lot of them are slower at getting there,
right? And there's definitely a different level of exposure for each child coming in, especially in pre-K and kindergarten.
Yes.
You're getting a wide range of knowledge,
experience, because you'll have parents that read to their kids since they were in the womb, and then parents that don't read at all to their kids and don't even expose them to any written word or reading. And so it's woo, crazy gap, and you're trying to meet all of them.
So let's give a pat or a clap for the kindergarten teachers who are expected to get everyone up to just level set before they can even really start to progress that bunch.
Correct. It's high five to them, all of them. So another thing, after assessments, they have standards. So I haven't like looked into it too much, but when I went to school, there was a state standard that like had a guide saying, this is what you're teaching. This student that's like in kindergarten, here's the standard. Like, so it's supposed to be across the board for all the schools in the state. So it matches,
Mm.
everybody is starting phonemic awareness and they want to learn the letter, the sound that matches the letter. That's like that standard. So that should help. Like that's where they use that to measure the assessment, and that's where they use to create curriculums to like your curriculum matches that standard. Because the curriculum, that's the next one, is crazy. It could be so different. You could have, it's just unequal to be how they're implemented, who makes them. There's a lot of really great curriculums out there, but then there's some that just lack.
So hold on, let me understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Standards are across the state.
Right, basically.
So all
yes.
of Maryland, that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
But wherever you are in your state, there is every school in that state has a standard
right.
for where what children should basically be learning, right? So that's kind of like the hierarchy or the general
yes.
idea. But then the curriculum kind of like steps down. It's a
yes.
step down, and that's how they apply the standard.
Yes, the standard, correct, yes.
But that curriculum can differ across.
Yes, from different schools, from different counties, all over. It can be different. So yes, so the standard should be matched, and a lot of curriculums are made with that standard in mind, but it's more free flowing. Like you can change it. And even I think in homeschooling, to a certain degree, they put the state will put some of those standards on you. Like,
right.
Here's where you should be targeting with your lessons, I guess.
So I have one other question there. Like, how is, and I don't know how much knowledge you have about how the curriculum is chosen, but is that up to the principal of each school? Is that up to politicians? Is that who makes those decisions?
I don't really know for sure. I think some of it is up to the principal to pick. Some of it is the government is kind of like, we want you to pick these, or we're paying for these for you. If you want us to pay for them, these are the ones you can pick, kind of thing. That's where the government could choose. And then it is based on like the principal. And then sometimes you have a great principal and she'll listen to the teachers, and the teacher's like, here's what's working also for my kids, and I want to use this, or even listen to the parents, because there's even some parents that are like, I don't like this curriculum and it's not working for my kid, or whatever, or I really like this one. Like the one at my kid's school is pretty awesome. My neighbor and I were just talking about the other day how much she loves it. She's like, she has a second grader, and she said last year they moved to this school. So last year her second grader had been in first grade, and she was like, she couldn't read. She was not fluently reading. And this year she is. And now she has a kindergartner, and her kindergartner is already fluently reading because she has started in this school. And she's just like, I just love it. And so it really varies. Like I said, depends on the government. They'll say, we'll give you the money for these curriculums. So maybe teachers or administrators and principals want to pick based on that. And then again, you can change it up if they want to pay for it. I even know I had some teacher friends who spent their own money on pieces of curriculum to add, because they were like, my students need this and my school isn't necessarily giving it to me, so they would go out and create it or pay for their own even. So that's like,
amazing.
Yes.
And I think we hear that a lot, especially in living in Baltimore City, where there are many places with limited funding, and we hear often about the limited resources that teachers have. So to know that these teachers spend their own dollars to teach our children, money out of their paycheck,
right?
Where that money, I mean, it would be so nice if it were available to them, right?
Right. Like, yes. And that's how it should be. So like, and again, and then you have teachers that aren't as dedicated as that, and they just go with the flow, or they're kind of lazy and just, so there's a very unequal match depending on where you
Yeah.
are and who's in charge, and it's tough for
So that goes to kind of speaks a lot to the different level of education that every single child in the public school system
Mhm.
is receiving, even within the same school at times,
Yes.
I would imagine.
Yes, because even parents can add, like, will add to it. Like I
Right.
said, if you take the effort to notice what your kid is doing, and in my kids, their reading homework every night is they have to read for 15 minutes. Harry's supposed to mark down how far he gets, so he's like working on his stamina, how many
Hmm.
pages, and like when he's working on skills at school, like maybe recording, taking notes, or noticing character traits, or like sometimes he has to take a note of that. And he is very independent and does it on his own. But I'm sure there's some other fourth graders that probably, I mean, if your mom's not standing, like, are you reading over top of you, they probably don't. Or they could
Right.
just, I don't know, make up some stuff to write down. Like, because it's kind of an immeasurable practice in a way, unless,
Yeah.
you're on it. So, again, just the same for my second grader. Like hers is just, she doesn't have to do any extra note taking or anything, but it just read 15 minutes every night.
Mhm.
And before she was fluently reading, it was like I was reading to her, like for school for that time.
Right.
And if you have parents who aren't involved and they're not doing the reading,
Or have
just
5 children and can't
yes,
get to
can't read.
everyone's homework.
Yes, oh, God, that's such a good point.
Mm.
So interventions, really, I'm going to talk about Lily a little bit here because kindergarten during COVID was hard. A.
My God, I cannot imagine.
B. She did great though, and she had me. Uh,
Right.
but B. Her birthday is in August, and the cutoff for starting school is September.
Yeah.
So she is basically the baby in her like age group.
Mm.
So she's a little bit younger. There's a lot of kids that it's just older, and it's maturity wise, it doesn't seem like that big of a gap, but it really, when they're younger, it
A
is.
year is a lot.
It's a lot of time. Like, yes. So that was tough for her. And so the assessments that they did for her, she was not meeting. She was not making it. And I could teach her, but I didn't want to press her. I wanted her to do it when it was her time. I wasn't like, we gotta read, we're reading, I make it,
Yeah.
they did enough for her, and so I didn't push it. But there was a lot. She was below the line a lot, and it's hard as a parent when they keep sending you this thing, and they have like the green and you're in the yellow and you're in the red, and she was in the red, she was in the yellow, and I'm like, and me as professionally like understanding where she's not meeting, but seeing her home, I'm like, I know she's okay. I know she's going to get there, and it's coming. But I can imagine a parent who didn't necessarily understand those standards and would be like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with my child?" So that was hard. But they
I
gave
can't
her
imagine.
back
How?
to the. They gave her a lot of interventions, which were nice. Like she had a little bit of special time to work on things with an extra person would take her aside sometimes. And they had
Mhm.
another, especially when she was in first grade last year and they're back in school, she was invited to do this after school program where they did a little extra targeted stuff. Um, and that's needed. It's helpful for kids who aren't meeting that timeline. Now again, she's there now. Like her maturity level is matching the standard now, and she's on it. She's reading chapter books. Like she's in that green now. And it's
Right.
awesome. But it was like, like again, between COVID and her age, it just took her a little bit longer. Um, but like I just think about kids with learning disabilities, or just, parents who, like you said, who have all the kids and they can't actually take that extra time, and it's tough, and those interventions are important, and they are also not necessarily equal across schools,
Mm.
because schools with more funding can have more interventions,
And
and
have
schools
more
with less,
interventions, I'm sure.
yes, and they
So,
can pay for better teachers and better, intervention specialists and stuff like
Right.
that, and it's not always there. Um,
So I want to, I did a little nerding out before this topic, as you
mhm,
probably suspected, because this is such a big, meaty topic. But one
mhm,
thing that I was reading just before we jumped on, and I don't like, I hate to quote, like, sit here and quote a book, but I
oh,
think
go
it's
ahead.
really applicable here. And I love the fact that you didn't push her.
Mhm,
I love the fact that you were kind of comfortable being uncomfortable, because it
yes,
really had to, from a mom's perspective, seeing your child struggle to meet, not kind of matching her peers in
mhm,
her ability. You had to, like, empathize with that. And
yes,
that's hard
it is.
emotionally.
It is.
But let's talk about how, like, what children can feel in that moment.
Mhm,
And there's a book called How Children Learn. And I think this is the one that Eric had told me was his favorite. But I just went into his, I haven't read it. I just went into his reading section, or his chapter on reading. And he said something that just stood out really significantly to me. And he said, we must be aware that their ignorance and clumsiness are often painful to them. And we must be careful not to rub their noses in their own weaknesses.
mhm,
And he talked about this specifically in regards to reading, and to pointing out words, and asking, prompting children to read before they're actually ready. Like, they see
mhm,
this big wide world around them of people who can do things that they can't, and pushing them forward in that, it can be emotionally painful for them.
yeah,
So there is, like, that piece, that emotional piece, that can, be traumatic at times, and we don't even think about that from a, when we're talking about learning. Like, I imagine that has to kind of come about with children with disabilities too, who are,
mhm,
don't aren't going to learn to read, or have, are autistic, or who can't see the words right. Like, there's got to be a lot of that emotional discomfort.
and I love that because I think it's also it takes a not all teachers have the ability to take in that empathy with a group full of kids.
No.
When you're trying to like meet that standard and you're like, okay, I got to teach this, I got to do this, I got to do that, like you have like a big job, and I think that is a like a what's the word, a hallmark, or like a flag, a red flag for a very good teacher if when they're able to do that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
hard. It's hard even as a parent, like you said, as a parent with your own one single child to like take that time. So yes, I like that point you made, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we go to your unschooling side.
Yeah.
I want to mention the or not the we just did interventions. I want to talk about the enrichments
Right.
that they have for reading in public school, and that is a lot of the students who are advanced, and they're like super readers, and they need more of a challenge because I see a lot of kids get bored, and they get,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like
And then they're
bopping
antsy.
around, and then you have behavior issues. For the other, I mean, you can have behavior issues when they're feeling that pressure, like you were saying, of not getting it too, on
Mm-hmm.
the intervention side. But I think it's even more with the enrichment boredness. And Harry has always, I don't know, it's because like he just had me for a long time. So he got,
Mm-hmm.
I read to him, I talked to him. The boy, so they do this thing called Lexile scores. They test their Lexile score, um, which I will add like a link for more information about that if anybody wants to know, because I don't have, I don't want to break it all the way down here. But basically, he's in fourth grade and he's reading on a college level. Yes, the kid
Goodness
reads.
gracious, no wonder he's bored.
Well, yeah, but he's not though. His school does a very good job of they let him they let them choose their books, which I love.
That's
He
awesome.
is just just at the end of fourth grade now. They've started suggesting some reading, but they
Mm-hmm.
still let them pick. Like, here is a group of books that match your ability. You can pick one of these. And then he's also allowed to bring in whatever, So, and he's just so good. Even when he does get bored, he handles it. I don't know. But they have a good job. They do a good job at his school of challenging them. And they have an intervention teacher who comes in and will, work on higher skills with them.
I don't mean to be a nerd or to show my age or our age, but that's like the gifted and talented kids,
Yeah.
right? I know they don't call
Yes.
it's not GT anymore, but
I mean,
I remember being in classes where they pulled like 3 or 4 of us out and we would
Mhm.
go and do higher level reading.
Yes. And that's that. I mean, I don't think he gets pulled out as much, but they do separate once you hit third grade at their school. They kind of separate them into groups by ability. So there is like, and then even in that they separate. Like he's right now they're reading. I don't know what skill they're actually working on, but it's him and a partner that are reading the same book together, and the teacher's encouraging them to stay on the same pace so they can discuss it.
Right.
So he tries to match with somebody who will pace with him.
That's awesome
So.
because that really helps him, it doesn't single him out, right? Like it
Mhm.
gives him somebody else that is kind of his partner in crime, right? But also there's something to be said for, we've, from the unschooling perspective, one of the thoughts is that there is a better way of grouping or teaching children than in a graded system, because the graded system is where, it relies on children of the same age.
Mhm.
And the assumption is that if they are children of the same age, they are of the same abilities or similar abilities. And that's not always true.
Yes.
So to hear that within the same age group, they're grouping their ability. That's really
nice.
got to be helpful for everyone in the class, being above and below.
Right, because sometimes when a kid will teach something they know, it helps them learn it better too. And sometimes it helps to work with somebody who is like lower ability than him, because then he'd be like, well, here, he can help teach
he can
the
help
skill.
He can learn compassion too, right?
Yes, and that empathy, and that happens a lot in school too. A lot they'll pair, a lower ability and higher ability, which sometimes I'm okay with, but like all the time I don't like it, because I'm like, then it's like, is he the teacher now? But
right, is he bringing home a paycheck?
Yes. I mean, I've seen when I worked, some teachers taking an advantage of that, and it wasn't the best plan.
I mean, I can understand it.
Yeah.
If you have 30 kids. Right?
Yes, for real. So, some affirmations. I have this for you too. For beginning readers, and when they're in school, a lot of the ways teachers do it, they get these little guide sheets each time they start a new skill, which I have one of those. I'll like share it on here too when I make the video.
I'd
But
love
Lily's, I took a picture of it earlier so I could have it here to share. Oh, where is it? Like the one she has right now. And it's like tips for readers, habits, like take a sneak peek. I know that's not really necessarily an affirmation. It's more like a little like guide. Retell along the way, like as you're reading, like think back, and it has little notes, and like how to tackle longer words when you're reading. So that's like, I guess it's not really an affirmation is what I would say, but like more like little guides and tidbits and helpful things. And also
like reminders.
Yes, reminders and like things I try and say, which she cracks you up now because she is starting those longer words and chapter books. And so she's doing a lot more reading to me, and it's hard for me to be patient sometimes, and I'll just say the word. She's like, "No, you're supposed to give me a tip or a guide. Don't just tell them the word, Mom." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I'm tired." But, yeah, so like, and affirmations like that would be like, I can sound out these big words, and I can use these pictures to help me figure out what this means, like things like that teachers say. And I love when they tell me, or when I hear you're learning this, and then talking to my kids about it. Like Harry just read Tuck Everlasting. That was his book. Like his friend actually picked it out. He's like, I wasn't too into it. He's like, it's like historical fiction. He's telling me about it, as he was reading it. He's like, I don't really like it, but I kind of do. And but it was just kind of cool. I was asking him to tell me about it as he was reading it, and I was like, yeah, tell me how it ends. Tell me how it ends.
That's great.
So that was fun. And then we watched the movie of it because they have it on Disney Plus, I think. So that was cool
Oh,
too
nice.
to match it. Anyway, so that was cool, like an affirming way to get him into that book that he wasn't into. I just kept trying to like be interested in it with him.
And I mean, also you're kind of helping him with his learning. I mean, even
Yeah.
if he's reading at a college level, he doesn't necessarily need a ton of help.
Correct.
But that's something that you'll probably also do with Lily, where asking him to recall that book is just, really, challenging his comprehension.
I mean, and how often do we as adults have to read things we don't necessarily want to read, but we need to read to learn?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And that's that's a skill to like persevere through that. So like, I have to read this. I don't really want to, but I got to learn this information.
Right.
So, so yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I'll touch on that. There's the need to know versus the want to know. Because the need to know is a lot harder to learn than the want to know.
It really is. It's so hard. You had another question about here about.
Oh yeah, so I was wondering about the curriculum and how, and the reason I wanted to ask this is because I just imagine that some folks, like similar to me, I didn't understand that there were so many different curriculums across schools. I didn't realize that the school here in my neighborhood and the one just in the neighborhood next to me could have two completely separate curriculums. I had no clue. So I'm just wondering, can the curriculum, meaning the way that the standards are taught, can that dictate the level of success of a school, and here specifically the literacy rate of a school?
Right. I think it could, if it is applied well, and I think it could. But I think more often than not, it really doesn't. It's a really kind of a loaded question. I think curriculum is like probably less than half the battle. So maybe it really doesn't. Maybe like 50% of or less of it dictates their success is based on the curriculum. Is that okay?
So that just leads into my next question,
Right.
which is, what are like the main variables that affect the literacy rate of the students at a school?
I really think a lot of it is support from home for literacy, because reading is such a applied like life skill almost. Like you need it every day. It's something we just to walk in the world, and even if you're blind, you still need Braille. Like, yeah. So, home support is a big part of it. And then how the administration is with what they choose and how much pressure they put on the teachers to work it. Because if there's like, you need to make this work, you have to use it this way and you have to get these skills, if they're pushing that pressure, I feel like it doesn't. But if you're kind of like, this is the curriculum, I really want you to look at your students and how you can make it work best for them, it will be better, as opposed to just like, blindly use it this way and
right, like forcing, restricting the autonomy. I think I mentioned that in one of my questions. Yes. So you think that autonomy with a curriculum for the teacher is the best way to get a successful?
Yes, using the assessment not for knowledge for the government and is this curriculum working, but using it for like, are the students getting it with this? Like, what can I do differently to help, so-and-so get these letters right? Like, just repeating this every day isn't working. It's like Albert Einstein's definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So you got to be able to change it up, for sure. So it's tough. And I'm glad, I'm not in charge of, I'm glad I'm not some government head, because making those decisions, and even administrator, it's a lot.
I mean, overall, those types of decisions are really difficult because you're leaving out a lot of people, and that's what you have. That's the only way that you can really successfully apply to a group, right? That you're going to have people at the top and people at the bottom who get left out, but whatever works for the mass or the majority is what has to be applied. So I think it's great that you point out that you have to have the support from parents.
Yes.
In order apply it alongside the teacher.
Yes.
To be successful at reading.
Really. And like my favorite thing when I taught, and I still do it with my kids, and I try and create this and things for my blog for parents and teachers too, is I like making different like stuff you can use in different ways. And like so the kids who can advance, and the kids who need more support can get it, and you change it. You do it different every time, and if you find something they like, you can change the theme of it, Like I know you were talking, well, let me think of an example. Oh, for me, Lily just started the chapter books. She is into this rainbow magic fairy book. We had like one of them that I thrifted forever ago, and she dug it out, and she was like reading it, and it's like crumpling. And so I found some more, and then another little boy at school, like his sister apparently was obsessed with them, and he brought her some, and now she has a stack of them.
Aww.
And so it's just cool. Like we took her interest in that, and she was like, I like this book. And now so now she has all this, and she's just going crazy.
Right. Because the content is what she likes.
Yes. So you got to take the time to notice. And that's the other thing with curriculum. And what I like about the one at my kids' school, because they let them pick, they let them choose. They're like, okay, these books are on your level. Here are a whole bunch. It's not just like, we're going to read this story about, the cat and the rat. But like, you can pick. They can pick their interest, and
right.
It's pretty cool. So
that's awesome. I think I think the approach for reading for homeschool, well, not for homeschool, for unschooling specifically, is much different to a traditional schools and curriculums. So I just wanted to have a little reminder about the definition of unschooling. And I'm actually going to step back once and just compare the difference between homeschooling and unschooling real quick. Because I was having a chat with somebody the other day and realized that they still aren't quite able to differentiate, which is fair. So homeschooling is just schooling any child from your home, right? That's kind of an umbrella. And homeschool can be done in a bunch of different ways. There are plenty, and we are friends with a family who homeschool their children or their child with a curriculum. So they bought a curriculum, like, you mentioned your teacher friends had paid their own money for, and they're following that curriculum at home, and their kids are sitting down and doing the workbooks and doing the homework and just doing traditional school from their home. Now, unschooling, if you're an unschooler, you are a homeschooler, but you're not following curriculum. So the definition of unschooling is just allowing children to learn organically and trusting their interests will lead their path of learning. So basically, imagine living an adult life as a child. You're in your home every day, tinkering with your toys, your things, you're making your food, you're running errands, you're outside play. We push a lot of play and outdoor time. You're spending time with your friends. And in those moments, you're learning. So with that said, one of the first bullet point that you summarized or started for us was timelines. Like, if we're not teaching anything, the first question that we often get is like, when are your kids going to learn to read?
Right.
And that's an uncomfortable one for a lot of folks. And I have to be honest, it was super uncomfortable for me, because for someone like Harry, right, he probably was eager to learn to read, and an earlier reader than some. That's kind of his thing, right?
Right.
But for a child with another interest, and I'll talk about Tegan, my 8-year-old. He is not interested in sitting still. He is very much an outdoorsy boy. He's outside scootering. He is outside running circles. He is playing with his friends on his pogo stick, on his caster board. I mean, you name it, and he's doing it outside. So to sit still and focus on reading, a skill that is boring for him, is,
Mhm.
it's not something that's easy to learn. So I went to before we decided to unschool, we went to a Sudbury school,
Mhm.
and that's very much like unschooling, where they don't have any curriculum. It's an alternative school for children maybe who are struggling in traditional schools. But um, we did an open house, and that was my question. I raised my hand like the green person, the greenest one in the room. I'm like, so when do they learn to read? And I could just feel Eric's eyes roll into the back of his head when I asked him. And so, but she gave a really great answer, and she kind of explained how reading happens. But between 8 and 10 is generally when kids become literate. I
Mhm.
wouldn't say fluent, but maybe literate,
Mhm.
right? So they can start to read on a basic level. And that's really uncomfortable. That's like, wait, what? You're telling me my kid might not learn how to read until they're 10 years old?
Right, it doesn't
Um,
match what public school has going for you. It
it
does not.
certainly does not match
Yeah.
what I was taught, was
Mhm.
what my parents were taught, what my grandparents, like we all thought that we had to read by, kindergarten.
Mhm.
So our 6-year-old has recently just started sounding out words. He's very interested, Callan, in, kind of guessing the words right.
Mhm.
You can tell he feels that sense of pride. So, and Tegan is reading at a very basic level, but he's still not just that into it. Um, but yeah, so it never really stops though. It doesn't start, it doesn't stop. We're working on it regularly.
Mhm.
Um, so the interest, how do we guide them when interest peaks? That's kind of the next thing. How do we get them interested?
Mhm.
We don't. That's not my job. My
Yeah.
job is not to get them interested in reading. um, I'll go back to another quote from a book, Unschooling Rules. This one is my favorite. It's written by Clark Aldrich. It's a super quick read and an easy read. But he says in one of his chapters that we learn because you love it or you need it. And with regarding things that one loves, learning is automatic.
Mhm.
Um, so for Tegan, learning is automatic when it comes to playing the beat of a song and
Mhm.
learning the words to the song over and over and over again. For his scooter tricks, it's practice. Like that is
Mhm.
all automatic. He's really into math. That's automatic.
Mhm.
Reading just ain't that thing that he loves.
Right.
And while he needs it, and he's gonna need it, like we know that we can't we
Yeah.
can't put a child in. I won't let my child go out into the world illiterate, but he's gonna come to a point where he's gonna realize I have to do this or I
Right.
need it.
He's
and
gonna
and
realize he
so
needs it.
right when the need presents itself, he's gonna fall into that time to learn. And so, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it always makes me think of like potty training.
Mm-hmm.
Because like if you start that before like they want to or need to or like have the maturity to, you're gonna be struggling. But
Uh-huh.
like everybody gets potty trained eventually.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna so and he will get like it's the same in the side like it's hard as a parent to wait when you want that bit like that skill. So
Yeah, it's
this
painful.
yes. So it's
And
sort of the same kind of thing of
because we're always really comparing, right?
yes.
Even like taking your kid to the doctors, they're comparing your child on a weight chart, on a height chart.
Mhm.
You're always comparing your kid to the standard. So I love that comparison of potty training. Another one is walking, right?
Uh-huh.
How old some children learn to walk at 8 months.
Mhm.
Other children don't learn to walk until 15 months.
Right.
But it has nothing to do with the success of them later in life.
Yes.
He actually referred that reference in
Mhm.
the book and talks about like your fastest runners, that are winning, or Olympic runners or sprinters. We don't ask when did they first
Yeah,
start
what did you
walking.
yes. Yep. And
So
it's you're so right. It's so and everybody's like, I know a lot of times people are like, oh, well, if you're going to teach your kid multiple languages, you should start as soon as possible because that's when
Mm.
they learn the fastest. And yes, they can learn so fast when they're young and they can get
Mhm.
things quick. But like, what if you're just not about that fast way? It doesn't have to be, like, go all 1,000%. I need you to be, a savant by the time you're 10. Like, you don't have to be that way, And
Yeah. And honestly, when you are that way, when you're pushing your children, that's when they step
push
back,
back. Yeah.
right? That's when they go, sorry, my interest is gone.
Hmm.
And I'll actually get that from Callan. So generally, I'm still what they call deschooling, where I'm trying to come back from this mentality that
Yeah,
I,
from your own idea of it.
right, from what I was taught schooling and learning is. And so sometimes when they come to me, I'm like, okay, we'll sound it out if you,
Uh-huh.
but Callan now will approach me and go, just tell me what the word is. Don't ask me any questions, Mom. It's like, I don't, because he's not
Yeah.
in that right moment. And that doesn't happen every single time. The other day he brought the book, everyone knows this book, Everybody Poops, or
Uh-huh.
Everyone Poops.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He brought it down from the bathroom and he's like, I sounded this word out. I was like, what? He's like, Poop. That's poops. I was like, yeah, perfect. But he was so proud of himself,
Uh-huh.
and it was on his own
Right.
terms.
He was ready to do that sounding out. But
Right.
it's still cool that sometimes you mention it. It's still like that sort of affirmation or guide. Like you're still reminding him that he can do it. And if he's like, I'm not ready, I don't want to do that right now, you're accepting of that. But you still like
Right.
can pop that. Like I would be all about like mentioning it here and there too. It would be
Right.
hard for me. And I
It
think
is.
it's still got to be okay to still,
So,
add
I
the
mean,
little reminders here and there.
it's not that I'm never asking them to read. I'm actually doing a
Yeah.
lot of it. And that's only because I want them to read. And it's my
Uh-huh.
goal to get them to read this year. But so I am presenting it very often. The other day we were driving out to, where were we going? We were in the city. I can't remember where we were headed. And I asked them if they wanted to do quizzes. Sometimes we started with math. And so quizzes for
Mhm.
math are really easy. But I asked them if they wanted to do quizzes. Oh, I offered a cake pop. So they had to spell out some words in order
Yeah.
and they had to try it until they got it to get a cake pop.
Uh-huh.
And so, that they were like, yes, let's do it. And it was fun to them.
Mhm.
And they were able to like phone a bro because
Oh
they
yeah.
would put in the
Like
car.
ask for help. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So we do that. I've got like digraphs here, like taped to the board. They listen to Khan Academy or do Khan Academy. So
Mhm.
there is a lot that's happening in reading, but if they don't want to, it's not
You don't.
required. Um, the other bullet point that kind of like topic or
Mhm.
point is that it's on their own. And this is kind of segued right into this.
Right.
So because unschooling is about organic learning, most of the time our kids are learning to read, when they want to. So if I keep library books out on the coffee table. If they're, kind of paging through that, they might ask me to help or to read to them or they read to me. But if I should try to teach them when they're not ready, then it just doesn't happen. You talk a lot, or you mention here about, no pressure, judgment, or comparison. And how do we do that as parents? It's tricky. We do require them to do something called 18 minutes a day. And this was just like a cheesy thing I saw on social. Who knows if it's true, but I tried it with my kids and it worked. So I'm running with it.
I like it.
It's 18 minutes of practice a day, just like, your kids are required to do 15 minutes.
Right.
And I allow that to be in any form. So they get to pick.
Mhm.
They can do Khan Academy. They can read a book themselves to me. We can sound out words, or they can just page through the pictures. I can read to them. We can read together. We can do quizzes. Any of that has to happen for 18 minutes a day. But otherwise, it's on their own and at their own pace. Now, the one thing I don't think I put this in my notes, but I wanted to make sure to mention that this comes, it's difficult because it comes with social stigma when they're learning at their own pace. We ran into this with Tegan and some of his friends who are in traditional schools.
Mhm.
And they would quiz him and he would get really let down. He's like, I don't
Mhm.
want them quizzing me. Like, I don't really care to do this. But two, I feel bad that I don't know the answers.
Mhm. It's
And you
tough.
have to be prepared for that if you're going
Yeah.
to choose
Right.
unschooling. 'Cause that was
'Cause
hard for him.
yeah.
As I'm sure it was hard for Lily and you
Yeah.
to see
When you're
her
not
like,
there yet. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's tough, but again, it all comes out. Everybody's eventually gonna be peeing on the potty or reading a book.
Right. Yes.
It will. He'll get there, and you know.
Enrichment based ideas, if we're comparing unschooling to traditional schooling, we would talk about how we enrich reading or how
Mhm.
um, we kind of assist when they're below. But because every day is full of learning opportunities, and we're not assessing them to measure their success, and we're not
Mhm.
comparing them to any standard. There's no real need for it's the term enrichment doesn't necessarily
It's
apply to this type of
it's
learning.
like it is what you're doing. You are
Right.
enriching their lives by adding in these little moments of like,
Right.
encouragement of,
Um, it's just it's
yeah.
what we do every day. So the
Uh-huh.
enrichment for a kindergartner may be, for example, your teacher might call home or send an email home and say, here's a few ideas for how you
Right.
can enrich your child's learning. Take them to the grocery store and ask them to find aisle
Mhm.
number 3. Or for the older child, ask them to find the aisle with the cookies on the sign. That's what we're doing on a daily basis,
Right,
right?
you're
So
already yeah.
it takes like a shift in our mind to just remember like there are little opportunities here, and I like to run with that. Some of my unschooling friends and moms, I don't know if they would say the same thing here. They
Mhm.
might not. They might just let their kids lead the way because that truly is unschooling.
Mhm.
But because I'm still pushing the
Yeah.
reading and that's my personal goal, I still take advantage of those enrichment type activities. I wanted to tell a story because I think you saw my post on Instagram, but this would be an enrichment activity. So we went to the zoo with a bunch of
Yeah.
our unschooling friends, and they just I don't know how long it's been open now, but they opened up the old side of the zoo where
Mhm.
you can see, as what we used to go through as kids, like the old cages that are so
Oh,
much tinier
yeah.
and smaller.
It's so cool to walk through
Anyway,
there.
it was
Yeah.
really cool. He was Tegan was with a few other children that were younger than him, but they were seeing a peacock, and there was a sign right next to it. So there's another path, kind of went off the path that we were going on,
Mhm.
and so it's like a big orange, A-frame kind of sign. And he goes, "Mom, I can read this." And I look over at him. I was like, "All right, well, tell me what it says."
Mhm.
And it said, "This path is closed." And we got down to the closed, and he had to sound it out, but I'll be damned. Once he read that, oh my gosh, I felt the smile on his face
Oh, yeah.
was so huge. He was so proud of himself. I was like, and he
Uh-huh.
did that without me prompting him. I don't know if a friend asked him what it said, or if it was just like a huge orange sign in the
Mhm.
middle of the road that he needed to read so he could
Mhm.
understand which direction to go. But that opportunity is enrichment based if you compared it to the
Right.
traditional system. But that was the moment that he was so happy. He told all of his friends, he told all of the moms. We like celebrated and had ice cream later, and it was fantastic. It was such a feel good.
I have a thing I want to say to that, and I think that's so cool, and I love that story. I love the picture you posted. He was all happy. Um,
But
but I wanted to say I had two thoughts in there. One was I feel like the unschooling and totally just like letting your kids lead the way. I get it. I get that's like the root of it. But
mhm.
I also feel like like when we were talking about in our first episode how unschooling, back in the day of the hunters and gatherers, like they were unschooled. And a lot of that was like kind of like survival based
Right.
learning. And now in this modern world, it's not we're not, I mean, we can do a lot of that learning. You can, people who farm and homeschool and do unschooling with their kids, like a lot of that's sort of like, you're learning how to work this job with your parents. But
Mhm.
like your kids aren't like they're learning maybe, you know, how to be in the house, but there's just like less, because we're in the modern world, so there's, I don't, it's less of the like survival, and so you can, you know, take the time to make more of those sort of enrichment. I know that's not the word, but like it's experiences like taking your kids to the zoo, or like making experiences for them that will put them in the line of making the choice to read more, because you have more time to do it, because you're not out there like washing clothes by hand and, you know, like
Right.
baking bread every day, and like you don't have to
Right.
do our lifestyles are more relaxed, or what's the word? I can't think of the word. But it's just we have more time to dedicate to that. And it's cool, and so especially, you know, you're home right now and you're just
Yeah.
doing it with
Well,
them.
I mean, I have to say, Eric, he stayed home with the boys, and tried to homeschool, and so he didn't necessarily have as much opportunity to go out with them. So
Mhm.
I think for someone to do this and also have other commitments is next to impossible, because then you
Yes.
don't have the time. But that part is what's, that's our school. We get to go on field trips all the time. We have, 2 to 3 days a week that we're with other unschoolers. We're outside at a park, or we're at the zoo, or we're at the science center, or whatever it is. And, they're learning together with a bunch of kids that are,
Mhm.
a range of ages. And it, it just, it does, you're right. It puts them in the path of
Right.
learning, because I mean, they could just be here watching Netflix
Right.
all day. And some may argue that, they're learning something to that, doing that, but not nearly as much as being around children of similar ages outdoors and playing.
Mhm. And you make the effort to put them out there, and you make the effort. The other thing is to like have the connection with them, so that when you do have that moment, they like, oh, I have this connection with mom, and she's, you know, trying to help me. So they have the respect to sort of listen. Like if you're just like, bye kids, and you don't have any
Right.
connection, like when you ask them to like learn something, or when you put it in front of them, not even ask, but like make it available, it's more, I guess, easily accepted too, which I think is
Hmm.
cool. And that's
Yeah.
another thing with like back in public school, and teachers. That's why connecting with your students and like looking at their assessments and noticing what they
Yeah.
need, you are better at your job versus just like being there and throwing stuff at them and not making connections. So that's another big important part, I feel like, of literacy, is having a
Right.
connection with your kid, your student, the person that you're trying to help become
Well,
literate.
especially with reading, especially with something as technical as reading,
Uh-huh.
going back to that quote from John Holt about them kind of, it's painful when children like understand that they don't know, and
Mhm.
it takes a trusting relationship for a child to be comfortable failing.
Yes.
Right? I mean, not just a
Yes.
child, any
Anybody.
person.
Yes.
I don't want to fall on, like, on my face in front
Uh-huh.
of a group of 30 people that
Yeah.
I kind of know. I would much rather do that with someone that
Mhm.
I know very well, that loves me, and that isn't going to take advantage of me
Yep.
or make fun of me in the moment. So yeah, I think connection, there is such an emotional piece about learning in general,
Mhm.
but really hard things like reading,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yes.
Measuring success, as an unschooler, we're not measuring success. That doesn't mean I don't know where my
Mhm.
children are in their reading learning journey. I can tell you about what Tegan can, what Callan
Mhm.
can't or can do. um, but I think that this is a really good opportunity to talk about the question that we so often hear: what if they fall behind?
Mhm.
When we present unschooling to someone for the first time, when they like ask about what we do, that's always a question that comes up.
Mhm.
And I think that is because we have all, for the most part, the majority of the United States, right? I am guessing, went to traditional schools, and so we are taught that we're supposed to learn certain things by a certain time.
Mhm.
Um, but there's also a lot of social stigma that comes with falling behind. and challenges for a child. So sometimes that question is asked out of concern too, like what if your kid falls behind? This is just like a mindset shift, that there's nothing to fall behind when you don't have a curriculum. When you're learning at your own pace, you are learning at the pace that works for you. That's not to say that you shouldn't challenge yourself. That's not to say that you could learn it quicker if you wanted to, but you're not falling behind anything. There's nothing
it's like your kid is setting their own finish line and it moves with them. Like there's not like, okay, we're going to cross this and then this and then this. It's like that's his, his mark, and he'll get there and he's ready to, kind of.
There's also, another concern that comes up, like it's harder to learn to read when they're older. And I mean, just with a quick Google search, a Google search, I tried to kind of, look into the evidence behind this. Is this true? And there's just nothing to support that as truth. It doesn't mean that illiterate children won't struggle more as they get older, because they need reading as a life skill, but that actual skill is not going to be harder because they are older.
Right.
And that just goes back to another point that we've also made, that sometimes if you push a skill too early, like walking, like potty training, like reading, it can have negative emotional effects on the child, so much that it will actually prevent them from wanting to do that skill.
Right.
And so you're going to affect them learning it later.
Right. Delay. It's going to add more delay to your.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we will finish with the affirmations that we use, and we use one really, really frequently that's kind of silly and funny, but we use it all the time. And we say, English is dumb. I think it is. And we like to, we do this because it boosts the kids up, right? Like when something says, like I asked them to pronounce, or I pointed out the other day, wrong. And I was like, where's the W? They're like, what? That's wrong. And the word wrong, sorry. And so it just supports that English is dumb thing.
Right.
Now, it doesn't take away from learning English by any means. I think it also helps them accept that our language is not the only language, is not the best language, but it's a fun way to kind of empathize and be compassionate about their learning process. That this is a really difficult thing that you're doing, and it's okay to be wrong. And we like it. So that's the one that works best for us. We have a couple of other ones, like, really, you can do this, is whenever they get something difficult, right? We go, see, you can do it.
Yes.
So that one helps a lot. But
yeah.
So those are our affirmations.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, so like when you have those big milestones, what's some of your favorite ways to celebrate? What do you guys like? I know you were talking about the cake pops was sort of like a motivator.
That was a motivator. Our kids like sugar.
Sugar.
So,
yeah.
I think we did ice cream, like an ice cream party after dinner one night for when Tegan read. We do high fives a lot. We like to tell people. So we like celebrate by sending a video or taking a picture or
watching
putting
them
on
do
social.
the skill. Yeah.
My kids, and I don't know if I've taught this to them or not, but they got to tell everybody. The other day, this is not related to reading. It is actually math, but we did math in the house, and Callan I found him with his cash register, and he was writing down math equations on a piece of paper, and he did some great math, and he was so genuinely proud of himself. When his two little girlfriends came over, they were talking to Tegan out front. He went outside and showed them, like, look what I did, guys. So he likes to kind of, I guess, gloat, if you will, about your success. And I think
they all the kids, like, because mine do the same thing. They're like, anytime they want to show it off. So
yeah, why
and
not?
Harry, God, he wants to talk to every person about his books that he's reading. Like, if he's into a book, like my neighbor will come over, he's like, you want to learn about this book? Well, she's actually like a big bookworm too. So like, it's like, you want to hear it? I'm going to tell you the whole plot of this book I've been reading, and I'll let you borrow it when I'm done if you want. And like, it's
that's so cool.
Funny. A lot of the things that I create on my blog are a lot of theme-based learning things. Now, a lot of them are very school-sided. Like I make a lot of alphabet flashcards and word cards, and I make a lot of 10 frames, which is like a really basic way to start counting and making sets of objects. But I do all of this themed, like I have like a cat one and a Christmas one, and so everything is sort of themed. I have something I would love to send to you guys because do you guys
Bring it
have
on, yeah.
do your boys do Nerf guns a lot?
They do.
So I
Well,
have
they
like targets with the letters or words on them. You could shoot, and even math, you could do like, and then hit the target and make
that's
the
fantastic.
equation. Um, so, and I just try and create things based on kids' interests to like, help make it more fun. Like, and I was even sitting here thinking about Tegan and riding his scooter and like, what's a way we could like, I don't know, make a weird learning skill or a reading skill that he didn't even know he was
Right.
practicing while he's doing something else. I really try and make stuff like that for parents and teachers to use. Springtime one, and I did a thing with Evelyn where we picked the alphabet flowers, and she doesn't know the letters yet. She's only 3 now. But she
Right.
picked the flower, she brought it to me, and I said, "This is A,"
Right.
just to start talking about or noticing the letters in the world.
I mean, honestly, who's not ever looking for something new to interest their
Right,
children, right? Like
for real.
kids need the second that they see something different and new, that's when they, are interested and intrigued and curious.
And so that's what I have a lot of that on my blog, a lot for reading, to help do enrichments for parents whose kids are in
Hmm.
school or help kids who are homeschooling. A lot, it's all there. I have a page on Teachers Pay Teachers where people can buy it. You can subscribe to my blog, and I have a lot of freebies people can print and download.
Can you say your blog again?
It's savorthemomlife.com, and it's always linked. Yep.
Cool. Well, I'm heading to Savor the Mom Life when we are off of this. I'm gonna go see what I can find.